There was the school assembly where it was a dress up day and I wore my old tux, emphasis on the old tux.
Yeah.
And in front of 400 children, I reached inside the pocket. I can't remember what I was looking for, glasses or something. And I pulled out, I said, "You want to know how long it's been since I wore this?" It was a comb.
Aha! Perfect. And you proceeded to do your whiskers. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So, almost everybody is here. Hello, Elsa. Hello, Delane. Hello, Kathleen. Hello, Anna. Hello, Amy. And Jair, ever invisible. Because his internet's slow. So it's the top of the hour. And does anybody have any especially pressing questions to ask before we start this week's Awareness Through Piano Movement lesson? How have you all been? Thumbs up for good. Lousy. I can't get all this piano somatic stuff. Yeah. What do you do? You're supposed to lie down, stand up, roll over, bird beak, amoeba. This is nuts. So, this week we're going to put it all together in terms of everything up until now has been a preparation for the actual act of like walking on key. Let's go like going from one to note to another. Yeah. And it should be said in advance that walking is way more complicated than running, for instance. So standing up is relatively simple because you engage a bunch of muscles like in the hand, finger itself, the hand itself, the arm, the biceps, tricep, everything, and now you're standing. That's great. Running is almost the same. So the whole body equivalent is getting out of the chair. And running is basically, it's a series of quick standing or springing off a standing. So you just spring off and spring off and spring off and spring off. So actually playing scales, fast scales or fast run passages is similar to that. But if I stand and then start to lose my balance, and then take out a leg to stop me from falling over, and then glide the weight from one to another. That is really very, very, very different. And I'd like to ask you all to stand up for a second. Stand up, and maybe if hold on to the piano or a chair back or something, and would you please reach your right foot back a little bit so that your right toes are about the same place where your left heel is, yeah? And then keep all your weight on the left leg, and lift the right heel off the ground and then tap it down, tap, tap, like a drumstick, several times. And then try to move your pelvis back, but do not shift the weight. So I'm moving my pelvis back in space, and my right heel is back, but the weight is still on the left. And then I tap, 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 tap the heel. So of course a tiny little bit of weight will go, but it's not really weight going onto that right heel. It's more just skeletal connection. Tap skeletal connection. Tap skeletal connection. And then come off again. Yeah. And then tap the heel a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. Yeah. Try to hold on to something to keep your balance, because you'll actually feel this, what I'm trying to get better. Okay? This is a very, very strange exercise. Yeah? So it's tap, 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 and wait a minute, and then tap. Bang the floor. Some people, you have neighbors or something, this is not to be advised. Okay, now just stand up again, and notice which leg are you standing on? Do you feel that you're standing on the right leg more? Do you feel that somehow that hip joint is different from the left one that was bearing the weight, the right one that was tapping? Okay, now let's do something else. We're only going to do this on one side. Oh yeah, now you can see me. Now, put your weight on the right foot and just touch the toes of the left foot to the ground. And with your right hip, all the weight on the right, move the hip joint forward and back, forward and back. So now the weight of your entire torso is more over the heel, and then it's more over the toes. You can bend your knee a little bit more or a little bit less. Move that hip joint forward and back in space so it's bearing all the weight and it's moving forward and back in space. Come back to the middle, stay with your weight on the right and just your toes touching on the left, and now go sideways. Move the right hip joint away from you, further to the right. Move it into the left, leaving your weight all the time on the right leg. So it's very important that you just touch the floor with your left toes. Don't put any weight there. And now move your hip joint, the right hip joint, in little circles as it's bearing the entire weight of your body. Move it in little circles, very small circles. The smaller you make the circle, the more you start to feel that there's little hitches. Oh, is it really a smooth circle? Is it really you can make it a tiny circle, the circumference of a dime, or a nickel, or a quarter, or a loonie, or a euro, or 2 euros. Yeah? And then reverse the direction. And that circle, it's like if your hip it had a laser pointing at the floor, would it be drawing a round circle on the floor? Is it really going around and around in a perfect circle, or is it a little oblong? Are there little hitches in the circle? Yeah. Okay, and then just stand on with your weight equally on 2 legs again and feel the difference between your left side and your right side. Okay, so let's sit down again, and you'll do the other half later, and you can actually press pause and do this for a little longer. That's just one tiny part of an awareness through movement lesson, and I'd like to hear any comments, any impressions from people. What was the difference in feeling between your two sides and your 2 hip joints when you did that? Anybody? Oh, everybody is going to just stay with their internal experience. Good. Why did I do that? What? Somebody.
Just saying that I have trouble with my right hip, so I did it on both sides. So
Oh, if you're do it only on the left side for now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I didn't catch that right away.
So the fact is that the hip joint it's the head of the femur, which is called the grand trochanter, and it's sitting in the acetabulum, which is kind of like a tea saucer, like an open saucer. Like it's not completely flat. But it's certainly not a ball and socket. So if the muscles didn't hold it there, they could just fall off. Yeah. And the best place for that acetabulum is right on top. Right on top. That's the best place for it. For the pelvis to sit on the 2 hip joints. Virtually nobody does it. We're all the the pelvis is a little off this way, or it's a little off that way, or a little off that way, or a little off that way. And so we lose actual structural integrity, structural potency. If it's really on top, then my God, that structure feels a lot better, a lot stronger, with no muscular effort. There's actually less muscular effort, because the muscular effort was preventing that acetabulum from finding that sweet spot. So what we're going to do today in the awareness through piano movement lesson, we're going to do something similar, but for the standing hip joint, the finger hip joint. And we're going to find the best possible place for that finger hip joint, which is actually the MCP joint over the fingertip. Now it's very difficult to do because you're on your nail. So we might modify it a little bit. But we're going to do stuff like that in order to increase the integrity of that entire structure and how the hand stands up, walks, runs, and jumps on the piano in a sensorial, structural way, not through bodybuilding, not through muscular effort, but by sensorially finding the right alignments, as we did now with our whole body. So just to review, we've done standing. So would you please now just stand the third finger up and bunch the fingers, curl the fourth and fifth, put the second finger next to the third, put the thumb under, like clamp the thumb to the underneath. So it's a kind of a modified bird beak, and just stand that up. And notice instantly the difference between just lying there, just flopping your hand, and standing the hand into that. Oh my God, when I bunched my hand together into this very specific shape, feel all the changes in the hand itself, in the wrist, in the forearm, in the upper arm, the shoulder, the ribs, the neck. And again, let that go and lie the hand down. And then just stand it up onto the third finger like we did last week, and sense again everything that's changing throughout the entire arm of the body. And notice, does the wrist want to just be in that neutral place, where he or she is not way up high, where he or she is not broken, but somehow balanced, so that if I started moving your whole body left and right or forward and back, little roly-poly movements with your whole body, sensing how, does that make the standing finger want to collapse all of a sudden, or can it adapt? Can it keep all the muscular effort, which is good, supportive holding contractions? Can it keep doing all those things which help it stand well, and not do any things which interfere with it standing well, like not be too tense, but also not let go and start collapsing just because you're moving around a little bit? Yeah? And now, switch the finger, do another finger, and stand and roly-poly with your body so that the hand roly-polies. And notice in this finger, is it different? The sense of engagement through the entire arm, the placement of the wrist, the relationship of the whole body. If I move my body back, then I might... Yes, Amy?
Which finger?
Oh, I'm doing fourth, but you can do any. We want to do them all. Let's do the fifth. And you notice every time I change fingers, I sort of find some other bird beak. I might just put my thumb and my fist together, for instance. Or I might just stand on the fifth and bunch all. There's many ways to do it. And of course, if I put my thumb to my fifth and leave the other fingers free, that's one feeling. So how does that feel? And again, roly-poly around, forward and back, sensing all the engagement all the way through, and how that engagement empowers. Or else stand on the fifth alone with all the fingers bunched. And that's a different kind of engagement. Which muscles change, especially in the upper arm. And how can you adapt to moving with that kind of a fifth finger standing? And now let's go to the second finger. And what changes in the engagement all the way through, especially in the upper arm? Is it easier to roly-poly here? Notice in which direction do you roly-poly, and all of a sudden a spontaneous breath happens, a spontaneous inhale. And finally, the thumb. What changes when you go from one of your fingers to that thumb? Can you make it's quite a radical change. The thumb stands very, very different from any of the fingers. The thumb's hip joint is right at the wrist. The wrist is going to be higher. But do you maintain the connection? Can you notice that you can actually roly-poly in very different directions? You can do a big thumb screwdriver. You can do all sorts of things with the thumb. Always helping with the body, sensing again the sense of engagement, and then an entire, So that's the structured standing that we've done. And then let's review dangle, 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 dangle. So just dangle your finger and then let it drop, and then let it hit a key, and then let it crumple, and then let it uncrumple as the hand falls into somewhere below your lap. And feel how different that is. Oh my God, my arm is not engaged at all. My arm is now letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. My gosh, this is so different. This is so different. How can these two, and do it going upwards, dangle, 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 dangle. So the fingers are now ropes, they're just ropes. No structured, no effortful standing, the opposite. If it stands for a second, it's just by accident. And feel how you can stand the finger by accident. And how does the entire arm feel? Just feel how different that is from the engaged standing we were doing a moment ago. And how there's such a complete let go necessary. Amy, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. Now, keep doing this, all these awareness through piano movement lessons. We do many, many things which don't seem to be the way we move when we actually play at all. It's some weird other way of moving. But all of them inform how we move at the instrument. So the idea is that when we come to play, all these experiences are there as a background in the motor cortex, and the brain refers to them, and all of a sudden you find yourself standing and walking and running in ways you didn't even plan, but because the reflexes have been informed, the reflexes have had the experience, it's possible for you to do it. So the idea is that you get better and you don't even know how. Like nobody learned to walk by walking, and so we're doing all this stuff which has nothing to do with walking, and then we're going to walk. So today what we're going to be doing is combining the two extremes that you just experienced. So this complete let go, this complete dangling, unstructured. Of course, the bones are still there. The bones didn't dissolve, but they are not solidified now into specific relationships to one another. They stay loose like bone ropes. And notice how different that feels. And later on, we're going to stand on a structured finger and then you move another key with a bone rope finger. So you're going to have, and you remember how different the upper arm felt. So we're going to have those two seemingly contrasting states in the arm coexisting. But before we get there, we're going to experience the key in a way that will evoke a different relationship between you and it. So chapter 17, Manipulate the Key, page 68. I start off by saying the biggest illusion in piano playing is that the key goes down. So, would you please play a note, or play a chord, or play a bunch of notes, and and just thinking that the key goes down. It's going down, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. So somehow you're making the keys go down. And then feel how it feels in your hand, in your arm, and in your body. So take a couple of minutes to do that with your microphones muted, of course.
Could you say it again, please?
So just think, like in your perception, it's going to be the standard perception that we have in piano playing. The key goes down. That key's going down. I'm playing a note and the key went down. And I'm playing a note and the key went down. And I'm playing a note and the key went down. Okay? So that's the way we normally perceive it. So just play normally and notice the sensation in your hand, in your finger, in your arms, in your upper arms, in the body. So, and try to remember that feeling, remember that sensation. And now, would you please do something funny? So now, take your thumb and your second finger and grab the edge of the key, and move the edge of the key a little bit down and up, as if you're wiggling it. So, it's as if I was wiggling a pencil. When you see me wiggling the pencil like this, one strange thing happens. It starts looking like it's rubber and it's bending. That's an optical illusion. But you don't see me moving the pencil up and down. You see me wiggling it. So would you move the key a little bit down and a little bit up and a little bit more down and a little bit up. And then, so you're wiggling it. And then wiggle it a little faster. Yeah? And can you actually feel the hammer? Can you feel the hammer? Can you feel, as you're wiggling the key, you're wiggling the hammer, but you're wiggling the key itself, but you're also moving a hammer. Now, if you move it a little faster, you can actually, but not so fast that it makes a sound, but almost. You can feel that you actually moved the key to bop the hammer up in the air, and then it came back down onto the key. So watch me for a second. So this tennis ball here, that's the hammer. And my hand, that's the key. Yeah? So do this with this little wiggly thing. It's very small movement. And you may want to rest the heel of your hand on the key slip so that it allows your arm and your shoulder and everything to let go more. Because when you first grabbed the key like that, how tense did you get? You know, it's possible to grab that key and create a lot of tension just to keep that holding on to that key. But can you do it? Put your heel on the key slip. So there's virtually no tension. And then you go, oh my God, with the heel on the key slip, can anybody hear? How good is my microphone? Hear that? That's the hammer bouncing up and down off the key and onto the key. So it's boop, 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 boop. And the hammer is actually leaving the key and coming back. Can you do that? Maybe not so fast at first. But actually when you do it really fast, it's the most easiest to get that hammer just coming off the key a little bit. Oh my God, my left hand's not so good as my right. How about you? Yeah. So as you're wiggling the key, you're getting this pretty clear sense of how much of the inertia that you're feeling is the weight of the key itself, and how much of the inertia is the weight of the hammer. Yeah. Try a key somewhere else on the keyboard. The bass hammers are much heavier, but the piano technician very cleverly regulates the action so that there's no more resistance. But the sense of inertia should be greater because to actually get that bass hammer moving should take more. So they put the weight of the hammer of the key a little bit further out so that the key moves down easier to compensate for their larger weight of the hammerhead. Can you feel the difference in feeling between a very low note, wiggle, 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 bounce, 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 and a very high note? Yeah. It's very strange because the weight of the hammer, the lead weights inside the hammer are closer to the fulcrum up high because the key is smaller, the hammer is smaller. So, but there is still some sort of difference in feeling between the high and the low. Okay. And now, but how can we do that with a black key? Well, I'll show you with my fifth finger, but you take whatever finger you like and you sort of glide the finger onto the key so that all three underpads of the finger, the distal, medial, and proximal phalanges, all three phalanges are on the key. And then, now watch this. I'm wiggling the black key, but you see even my forearm is going up and down. So wiggle the black key and figure out, is it easier just to wiggle it by moving the finger itself, or is it easier to wiggle by moving the entire forearm a little bit up and down? Figure it out, and figure out what your wrist does. This is a wonderful way of feeling how the wrist stays in the middle. And something in the forearm is communicating through to the key. Can you feel it? It's as if the forearm is moving the key. But it's not the weight of the forearm. It's the skeletal activity of the forearm. And again, you move the key and then you feel the hammer coming back and actually pushing the finger back up. Because now I can't wiggle, and when I'm wiggling, holding onto the key edge, I can move the key up as well as down. But now you rely on the action of the piano. So wiggle it down, bounce the hammer, and then let the key move your finger up, and then rest. And rest with the palm of the hand mashing the white keys down. And then try again. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Bounce the hammer on the black key, and then rest.
Finally, I feel something in my shoulder.
Uh-huh. Yeah, like all the time we're trying to feel how the upper arm and the shoulder and the body, the rib, everything, all of that is always engaged. And for each of these changes, this feeling through here will change because the quality of the engagement changes and the specific muscles involved will change. But we have to go very small and stop and let go many, many times to start feeling how those connections through are changing in their quality. Oh, Brian's here. Brian's done this before. And last time we did this, week 5, prior to the week, he sent me this wonderful email where he said, and now try this, the keys are not a bunch of buttons to be pushed down. They are a bunch of tennis rackets, which are to be moved in order to hit the ball. But when the ball comes onto a tennis racket, it gets onto the mesh of the racket and then bounces off, which is why I brought this ball today, Brian, by the way. So, yeah, change your finger, change the finger, and lay the finger down, and then use the whole forearm to bounce the hammer, and then rest by laying everything down and feeling what's changing in the upper arm and in the ribs and in the armpit, in the shoulder blade, in the clavicle. And then again, now raise the hand up, and now remember the way we were doing this crumple going way back to the very beginning of this whole series. And now just dangle and wiggle the key like that. So now I'm just dangling and try to dangle, 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 and do not stiffen the finger in any way. Leave it completely loose, leave it completely loose. And use the forearm and wiggle the key, wiggle the key, wiggle the key. and sense the weight of the key, the weight of the hammer. This you can do either on black keys or white keys. Yeah. Yeah. Take a rest. If you were doing that with just one hand, or even if you tried both hands, let your hands hang by your sides. And take a moment to sense what has changed in the sense of your arms. If you did it on just one side, is there an actual sense of one arm being longer than the other? Is there a sense of the aliveness of the hand, or the actual position of the hand? Is the hand more with the palms towards the body, or more with the palms facing behind you? Has something changed there? Is it different from left to right? And does the sense of the hand be connected through into all the different parts of the shoulder girdle? The shoulder girdle, this wonderfully complex structure which has a collarbone and a shoulder bone and a shoulder blade, and it creates this kind of semicircular assemblage that floats on the rib cage. And how do your arms feel in terms of their relationship to that shoulder girdle as you hang your hands now? So, for those of you who are going to be using Pianimals to teach, you see that due to space constraints, I could not include the richness, the possible richness of every one of these steps in a typical lesson in the book, or the book would have been 1,000 pages long. So it's up to you to acquire the mindset of a Feldenkrais practitioner, and acquire the mindset of what is piano somatics, what is sensorial learning, and to bring a sensorial richness to. And kids will love it. They basically love being in better touch with their bodies, especially in this day and age of screens, and we're all just kind of half dissociated. So these sensorial exercises are a wonderful way of bringing you back to yourself. Now, would you please, let's stand the second finger, because that's maybe the easiest one to see, or the third, whichever one you prefer. But what I want you to do is stand the finger up and notice to what degree did you use internal effort in the hand, and to what degree did you use just a movement of the forearm forward and up. And I'm gripping a little bit, but my forearm is coming along for the ride. They're kind of 50-50. And then stand your finger up until the hip joint, the hand's hip joint, the metacarpal phalangeal joint, is as high as possible. So you see, the only way I could make this joint higher is by taking the hand away from the key, or away from the table. So would you please do that? And again, noticing what's the feeling in the underside of the forearm? What's the feeling in the wrist? What's the feeling in the elbow, behind the elbow? What's the feeling in the upper arm? If you stand the finger and you show your hip joint, I want you to show me your hip joint. I want to see that knuckle sky high, like the peak of an Alp. And if you press in a little bit on the finger, a little white spot appears. That's the snow on top of the Alp, and that's because the blood flow is reduced to the very top of the knuckle. But you don't have to do that. You can if you like, but it's not necessary. So, and when you really try to get that knuckle, it can't be any higher. You might even come up onto the nail. Notice how much effort is in the hand and how much effort is in the arm. And if it's 50-50, then try it again, making it 60-40. More effort in the hand, less effort in the arm. How does that feel? Does that tend to pull your body forward more? How does the body respond to this? It's possible to do it and move the body away. What happens spontaneously with you? And then do 70-30. Hang the arm, hang the arm, hang the arm. And make the finger do quite a vigorous effort, And again, I'm going to do my second finger so you can show your hip joint. Show that hip joint. Make it as clear as possible. And the arm is still hanging. And the finger is quite effortful. How does that feel? How does that make your arm feel in relation to yourself? And if you hang that arm and really hold the finger, do you sense at a certain point a deeper in-breath? Because something's let go all through the upper arm. And let that go. And then try once standing with 10% finger effort and 90% arm effort. So a very light finger touch. So the arm is now floating rather than hanging. And you could almost go off. You could almost just raise the whole assembly off, float it up into the air, but don't. Just come here, and it's the fingers 5% or 10% or 15%. And again, you notice that you can get your hip joint, the hand's hip joint, to a prominent position. And now you fool around with it on your own. 1575, 1585, or 2575, or 60% arm, 40% finger, or 50-50, or way more finger. There's hundreds of different variations you could do. And notice which of those most easily gets that hip joint to its highest point. And notice in each of those what's changing, especially in the sensation of the triceps, the muscles behind the upper arm. And notice, does your wrist tend to float up too high? Or does the wrist tend to stay cramped down? Or can the wrist find that middle ground? Where's that middle ground for your wrist? Fool around with it. Lightly hang, or heavily hang, float. To let that wrist, all of a sudden, boom, it'll go to the neutral. You cannot dictate where the neutral it is. You have to find it sensorially by organizing yourself, fooling around with different degrees of finger effort or arm effort until all of a sudden the wrists are not stuck in one place, but that's their place. And my hip joint is high, sky high. You can do it with more than one finger. Stand all four fingers, for instance, to get those hip joints. Try different variations. Well, Brian, your wrist is coming up too much. Brian, hang your elbow more. Hang your elbow. Look. Hang the elbow. Yeah, that. Yeah. You feel how different that feels? Yeah, Amy. Anna, your wrist is a little high. Anna, your fingers are too curled. Could you do it with flatter fingers? Because with your fingers curled that way, you can't get the hip joint as high. Look, my fingers are curled. Now I straighten them. Look where the hip joint goes. Yeah, that. Look, everything just totally, all of a sudden your wrist knows exactly where it is. Yeah, Kathleen, your fingers are also a little, it's wonderful to have curled fingers. Many times we'll play like that, but for this particular exercise, if your fingers are, there, did you see your hip joint went higher? And now, the hand's hip joint is the knuckle. So let that hand hip joint come high, and then do not keep going, Kathleen, so that the wrist comes up above. Like, no, the knuckle, no. The knuckle is here, this knuckle here, the metacarpal phalangeal joint. So get that as high as you can, and then tell the wrist, okay, we're done. The wrist does not have to come up here. You see? So if you now get your knuckle sky high, Kathleen, and now stay there, hang there, and now keep the knuckle there and let your elbow drop. Ah! Yeah, what changed? Something changed, right? It's like the whole different feeling of the empowerment of the hand and the freedom of the arm. Yes. Elena, your fingers are too curled. Okay, Elena, look, you're here. Now, you can look at this. I'm going to straighten my fingers and push push myself away. Now watch, if I straighten my fingers and push as if I'm pushing away from the piano, extending the fingers, if I went too far, it would be like that. But straighten the fingers, and now stop. No, your wrist went too high, so watch. Straighten the fingers, and now stay there, stop. And now let your wrist breathe out 2%. Yeah, there. And now in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. Balanced at this point. Don't move your wrist up and down. Breathe in. Breathe out. Look, watch me. I'm going to move my wrist up and down. Move. Now I'm going to breathe the wrist in. Breathe the wrist out. It's a totally different quality of movement. And you bring your other hand here to help. Yeah, and now let your wrist breathe out. Let your wrist breathe out. Yes, that. And now breathe it in just a bit. Stop. That's far enough. Now look at your hand's hip joint. And now out. Breathe out. That's right. Breathe in. That's it. You see, this question of the relationship of the hand's hip joint to the wrist is very complex. And one reason we're doing this now is because I just watched the last time I taught this, was 8 weeks ago, and the wrists were like all over the place. And I didn't take the time there to look at everybody, and so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to everybody. Elsa, let your wrist be a little bit higher. But not so far. They're there, and now move it down 2%. That's right, and now up 1%, and now down 3%. And you see, it's breathing, and it's balanced, and somehow the distribution of effort between the hand, which has vital standing, and the arm, which is easy breathing, let go. If the arm is too heavy, it's down there. If the hand stands too much, it's going to pull the arm up too high. But right in the middle, there's this balance point where it's just floating literally like a cloud. The arm is floating like a cloud. And that's the sweet spot that we want to find. So each one of us had a different variation of screwing it up. Okay, Monica, you're doing great, but you do now when your wrist gets to the top, do 10% less. So go down again, and now when you rise up, just don't go quite so high. Yeah. That's it. You're done. You see, because now your hand's hip joint, this is wonderfully prominent. Look at that. If your wrist keeps going up, it's going to rob the prominence of the hand's hip joint. You understand? So let that wrist go up and feel what changes. Oh, it's not so. Yeah. There now it's starting to feel funny, and now a little too low is funny, but in the middle it's like a sweet spot. And Alejandra, your wrist is way too high. Hey, Alejandra, you see, this is you. This is classic. You're doing this like that. Like your hand's hip joint, the knuckle here, is totally out of the picture. I mean, it's not dead, but you're doing this, and I want this. You see, your wrist is way too high. Now come all the way down. And now just let that knuckle come up and leave the wrist low. Help with your other hand. Okay. And now go, stop. There. Does that feel weird for you? Yeah, now breathe out 10%. Breathe out 10%. And breathe in 10%. And breathe out 10%. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for in this exercise. Yeah. So you feel in here, in that knuckle, in the hand. That's where all the potency is. And the wrist does not want to rob the hand of that potency by overdoing it, by inserting itself into the picture. The wrist is behind. It's a wonderful, floating, negotiating, kind of sensing, staying in the middle so that it can allow for a negotiation between the parts. When the wrist comes up here, it's taken over. There's no relationship between arm and hand. And now the wrist is collapsed, sunk down. There's no relationship between arm and hand, but in the middle, oh, there already. Oh, there, good. There, good. Everybody fool around with it. And of course, I can come back here. I'm trying to stand straight up, but of course, you remember there's some Buster Keaton film where he stands up and then he kind of like he leans over and he leans over this far, but he doesn't fall over and nothing's holding him up. So this is kind of like, oh, let's bring the hand back here, but you see that now the wrist is lower, the arm is lower, everything's lower, but the hand's hip joint is still prominent. It's still numero uno. Yeah? Yeah. Much more real when standing on my knees. Aha, cool. Nice. So, yeah, so I'm sitting very low, so that if I was sitting higher, this might be more difficult. Okay. Take a break. Any questions, any perceptions about this rant that I just went on? Yes, Elsa.
When you say you breathe, you mean that you change the angle of the wrist, or you keep the wrist in the same position and you just go inside and outside with the arm?
That's a very good question because it both. I like what the second one you said, where just see the wrist is just basically keeping the same angle, but you see here the wrist basically keeps the same angle, but there's a little bit of a change. So that's a very good way of formulating it, because what everybody's doing, they're making the wrist too high and too low. So maybe that's because of the way I said it. So yeah.
It seems like it would be a good way to do it when you said somebody was curling their fingers too much, to go from curling to straight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really feel the value of this. It's such a different feel. And I don't know. I mean, it kind of wakes up the hand,
Yeah. Yeah, Kathleen.
I was having a lot of trouble with this, as you recognized, and I stood on my knees instead of sitting on the chair, and it made all the difference.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah. I developed a whole series of where you lie down, actually lie down on the floor and then stand the hand up like this. And that's very, very fascinating. But we're not going to do that today. You can do that on your own watch. Anna.
Alan, when I go up, my thumb always wants to, it's very dependent on the hand.
Well, if the thumb, if it comes in here and touches the finger, that's perfect. If it comes up like this, if it comes up above the hand, no. Then that's the finger's not working and the thumb's trying to pull the hand up. No. The thumb helps the hand stand up by coming in under the fingers.
But
and if the thumb comes in and opposes, then everything stays straight much easier. Look, my thumb is going to help the finger stay straight. Yeah. And now stay there and let your wrist breathe out. Your wrist. Yeah, that. Did you see first your elbow breathed out and your wrist did not breathe out? So that's, you're holding a lot of tension in the wrist. And now when the wrist breathes out, then that tension goes into the hand where it's doing a lot of good work. So this is very important. If you're like this and your wrist won't breathe out, it means that the effort of the hand has bled into the wrist and there's a lack of differentiation. So this is why, look, we're sort of off track here, but it's good that we're off track because my whole point today was that walking is way more complicated than standing, but now we're figuring out that standing at the piano is also very complicated, more so than we thought. Because when you stand up and that the effort of standing bleeds into the wrist so that there's tension in the wrist, there's a lack of differentiation. It's undifferentiated. And now you keep a nice bird beak effort in the hand, and then you let the wrists breathe out. And it's not moving the wrist down. It's breathing out. It means the muscular change in the wrist happens by microscopic increments. Yeah. And now a little more, Anna. A little more out. Breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. One. There. There. Feel different? That's a differentiated wrist. Now your wrist is in neutral while the hand maintained high activity. This is crucial for standing, but it's especially crucial for walking. Because in walking, you're going to have to move on one standing finger and do a Tai Chi empty step of the other finger. Is everybody familiar with the Tai Chi empty step? Maybe let's try it. Please, let's stand up, everybody. Stand up. I'm going to move my camera away a little bit. So, oh yeah, you can't really see. Okay, look. So in Tai Chi, you bend the knees, and then get all your weight onto the right foot. And now just move your left foot out and touch the floor, but do not shift the weight. So you touch the floor and then maybe touch the floor somewhere else, a little bit more forward, a little bit more to the left, a little bit more to the right. But all the time, I'm standing on one leg and the other leg is touching. You can touch wherever. Right? Try it on the other leg. Stand on one leg. Bend the knee a little bit and then just touch and touch and touch and touch. Oh, I forgot to put my shoes on. And touch. So you see, the standing leg is the yang leg. And the touching leg, the empty step, it's a step that has no substance. It's a yin leg. It's as empty as can be. So now, stand the finger. Stand the finger. Let's stand the fourth finger. And the second finger is the easiest one to do the empty step because it's the same length. You see they're the same length. Okay, so stand, 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 stand. Get that nice, the combination of standing. I'm doing two hands, but you just do one hand, okay? The standing effort within the hand and the helping with the forearm. That nice combination of the forearm floating and the hand judicious standing effort. And then feel how you can roly-poly on that standing finger. Now we're roly-poling on the standing finger, leaving the wrist in neutral, and not bunching the other fingers to help the standing finger stand, but just letting the standing finger stand under its own power. So there's a considerable amount of effort within the finger itself, plus a little bit of floating from the arm. And then as we're standing like that, what happens when you try to, remember how we wiggled keys? Remember how we wiggled keys? What happens when you try to wiggle a key with your second finger? But don't, okay. So sense what's going on. And sense to what degree, there's basically three options. One, you start to wiggle the key and the standing finger collapses. Two, sorry, my computer's blocking the view. Okay, now the computer's not blocking the view. Two, the standing finger stiffens to help the wiggling finger wiggle its key. But can the standing finger continue to roly-poly, and help with your body? That's very different. Keep doing that. I want to watch everybody. Elena is very good. Brian's so far away, I can't really. Why did I go to full screen? Brian, roly-poly more as you're on the standing finger. And then as you're roly-poling, do a wiggle with the yin finger. That start. Wiggle more slowly. Wiggle more slowly. Yeah, 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 yeah. And this whole experience is so that you start to feel, where do I bind up? Where do I interfere with this free wiggling of the empty step finger while that standing finger is standing? So I'm roly-polying my whole body to help the standing finger find that magic place where it's not too effortful and stuck, but it's also not risking collapse by being not effortful enough. So just enough effort to keep it vitally standing, and then a free wiggle from the other finger. And of course, you can fake it by lightening up, by doing a little bit more of an arm float. And so there's actually less standing effort. So this is something that you can't do in real Tai Chi walking. It would be like if I was Tai Chi walking and a huge crane came along and lifted me up a little bit so that my yang leg is still bearing all my weight, but there's not that much weight to bear anymore. And then my yin leg can do an empty step even easier. So you see, we can do that by just float the forearm more. Boop, 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 boop. You know, if I'm really effortfully standing, it's more difficult to make that differentiation. That's also a wonderful exercise because we should be able to do it. Effortful standing. Change the finger. Let's keep 2 and 4 because they're the same length, but now stand on 2. Make the second finger the standing finger. Show that hip joint. And then wiggle, 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 wiggle with the 4th finger, and move that hip joint somewhere else by roly-polying. Kathleen, your wrist is high. I think you should get back down on your knees. Take the knee. Or else just do something to let the elbow hang more. Let the elbow hang more. Yeah, for instance. Monica, that's good. Amy, help the forearm with the other arm. Yeah. Look how I'm helping my forearm find really good standing. Well, I'll do the 4th finger here. See, I'm helping with my other hand. Oh, now I'm showing my hip joint. My 4th finger is showing its hip joint really good. And oh, look, my 2nd finger can totally freely wiggle. And now I allow my forearm to come down a little bit, so my hip joint is actually a little lower, but I'm still showing it clearly. And wiggle, 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 tap, tap, tap. 4th finger, help with the other hand, help with the other hand. Tap, tap, tap. Elena, don't be too still. Keep moving, 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 moving. Yeah. This can get very intellectual very quickly. You just get stuck there and then but it's less living, it's less vital. It becomes mechanical. We want to keep it organic. So if I'm standing on one hip joint, I won't just stand there. Actually, I'm continually adjusting. Oh, where can I stand easily? Where can I stand easily on that hip joint? Where is that? You never get stuck. You're always sensing, how could I? It's always vital and organic. It's never mechanical.
The fingers joints are so different.
Each one is so different. So do you remember what we did at the very beginning of the lesson? This standing and tapping the heel, and then standing on one hip joint and doing circles and everything to get the acetabulum on top of the head of the femur. But that's what we're doing here now. And on each finger joint, the 2nd finger hip joint will be very different from the 3rd finger hip joint, which will be very different from the 5th finger. We haven't even dealt with the thumb yet, for God's sakes.
So is the standing finger always, you're basically straight, you're not in a lower position? You talked about bringing the wrist lower, but
yeah. Eventually the wrist can come a little lower, like Buster Keaton, right? But also you can also do a little bit of curling, You can also do a little bit of curling. But we started off straight just to get that hip joint as high as possible. But of course, there's going to be all sorts of variations. A little bit more curling, but the hand's hip joint of the yang finger is always like pumped and like empowered. And then the more the hip joint feels its vitality, feels its potency right in there, in the apex, the keystone of that arch, which is a moving keystone. Then the yin finger becomes free. But when I do the yin finger, I have a tendency to poop out, to let go of the potency of the standing finger. So it's the whole idea is to enrich the sensorial experience of walking. The inherent organization of walking is to have one standing finger and one moving finger. And of course, in walking, what happens is that now the moving finger, the empty step finger, becomes a standing finger. And now there's a new empty step finger. Then that one becomes a standing finger, and now there's a new empty step finger. And then that one becomes the new standing finger, and there's a new empty step finger. And we'll speed it up, of course, but we're slowing it way down, and we're breaking it down into its parts to empower every aspect of this very complex organization. Make sense?
Are there a different level of relationship with each finger with the rest of the arm?
I think
always, or just at the first?
I think, well, Chopin said that all these, in his day, there were hundreds of technical books which gave to finger equalization exercises. And Chopin was brilliant in one of the many ways he was brilliant. He said, no, each finger is very individual. They should not be equalized. He would have you play a melody with the third finger alone, because that's the fattest one. That's going to give the most rich sound. And so he felt each finger has its own individuality, and what you're sensing when you, oh my God, it feels totally different all the way up my arm to stand on my fifth than it does to stand on my third. Yeah, that's natural. And it goes so far as if you sense in your collarbone, then you stand on your thumb, then the part of the collarbone nearest to the center activates. And if you stand on your fifth, the part of the collarbone out near the edge activates. And for each finger, there's an actual localization on the collarbone. And it's the same for the shoulder blade. The fifth finger activates more towards the bottom of the shoulder blade. And then now the thumb, that's up towards the top of the shoulder blade. So the muscular engagement for each particular finger will change. That's a very perceptive question.
Yeah, because to me it was, but it is so hard to my second fingers, and the left is raised. I can't find the right way in comparison with third or fourth fingers.
Wow.
This is the reason my wrist was too high, because my second fingers are most lost.
So Alejandro, to resolve that problem, you go back to teeter-totter. You go back to Teetering Toucan, chapter 14, page 56, and you stand on the third, and you glue your second finger to the third finger, and then you just go over like this, and you get your third finger to teach your second finger. See? Now, and then finally get off the third finger, but keep them together like this. And then the third finger will teach the second finger how to get a similar engagement, but of course the muscles, it'll be a little bit over. It'll be a little bit more to one side for the second finger, but I think you'll be able to help yourself by doing this, going back to teetering toucan, and specifically do it for the second finger in relationship to each of the other fingers. Now look, I'm doing 4-2. Look, 4-2, 4-2. I could even do 1-2. Look, but without separating 1 and 2. I'm keeping them clamped. Look, they're clamped. Look at that. Look, I'm knocking. Knock. Knock. You hear that knocking? That knocking sound. That means I'm using the skeletal structure. And so the other fingers can actually teach the second by helping out. Okay?
Yeah, I felt this kind of help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Alan?
Yes.
How is the shape of the hand when I standing up on fifth?
Oh. Well, the fifth finger has this wonderful muscle, the hypothenar. It's the second biggest muscle group in the hand. The thenar, that's the thumb. And when you activate the thenar, that's when the whole thumb moves and you get opposition. But the hypothenar also opposes. And the hypothenar means that the fifth finger is the strongest finger. No other finger has such a big muscle. But of course, the first way you're going to do that finger shape is straight, 90 degrees. And do not let the wrist come up like that. It's here. And look at my arm. Flat as an ironing board. You see, as soon as the wrist comes up, the fifth is less strong. The hypothenar is less engaged. Now, I'm going to leave my wrist in neutral. The hypothenar is wonderfully engaged. Yeah? And if you want to work on that, you do this exercise where you curl all your fingers like that, except for the fifth, and you put the fifth finger, for the right hand, it'll be on C sharp or F sharp. And then you just move the knuckle back. So you actually move the knuckle back. Like that. But no, with the fingers curled like this. Other fingers curled. Yeah. And now lie down and then move the knuckle back. There, that! Did you see the whole hand retracted? So you see, you've got the power of the hypothenar. You've got the power of the whole hand. All going into that little fifth finger. Never again will you believe your fifth finger is weak.
Thank you.
Yeah, later on, of course, we're going to curl all our fingers, but to avail themselves of their standing power, first of all, that's the best way to make sure that every one of your hip joints is wonderfully engaged. So when I curl, the hip joint is always there, powering the curl.
Thank you. Okay,
so let's move on to Sauntering Sandpiper. I haven't played any of the pieces for you, but you see how how this thing works, how we actually stand on a yang leg and wiggle a key with the yin finger. So here. Yeah, so I'm not going to bother doing all that, but you see very clearly from what we've been doing, that's the actual technique you use to okay, it's very clearly the technique you're using. And of course, when you go to play the notes, you'll find, oh, my hand pooped out again. I just taught my hip joint to really to stand up well, and all of a sudden it's collapsing again. Because now I'm thinking about notes and I'm forgetting to think about what I should be thinking about. But that's the opportunity, is to think about them both. Yeah. So that chapter, the Tai Chi empty step, that addresses the complexity of walking head on. So let's go back now, and actually when we start to walk, let's try to do a simpler way. Like that Tai Chi empty step chapter, that's basically like learning to walk the way babies walk only when they reach 7 years of age, where the hip joint is going through a complicated three-dimensional movement, figure eight, where now my left hip joint is higher and more forward and more to the outside, and now my right hip joint is higher and more forward. So you see it's a figure eight on 3 different planes of motion. That only happens when you're 7. So let's say you're not so good at that, or your student is not so good at that. Let's go back to the sauntering on thumb and finger, and let's do the way you walk when you're a baby, when you're 1, and you walk like this. None of that complicated figure eight stuff is going on in the pelvis. It's just structure. Because that's the simplest way. That's the first step, or the first evolutionary step. So now, I just mentioned teetering toucan, so would you please now do teetering toucan on thumb and fifth, like this. Yeah? And notice, and keep the hand as structured as possible, even though that you're not clamping fingers together, okay? Keep it a totally fixed structure. 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 Even if you change the finger and did 4-1, it's always between the thumb. No, Elena, your hand is not fixed at all. Look, you're doing this and your hand is all sorts of, look, the hand structure, it literally does not, it's like it's cement. It's like the hand is a statue. The hand is a statue. Nothing in the wrist even. Look, the whole arm is a statue. Only, yeah, okay, let's do it without the body. Do it without the body. Leave the body in neutral and just, that's better, Elena. Alejandra, that's good. Go more to the outside, Alejandra. Rock more, yeah. Supinate more, supinate more. Yeah, that.
My wrist is too high.
My wrist is kind of high, but I don't care for this one. Because there's no way my hip joint is going to get weak because I'm solid. So if my wrist is a little high, it doesn't matter. Your hip joints, hands hip joints are still going to be good. But Ramon, your hip, okay. Ramon, do it for me. Yeah. Brian, your hand's not stiff enough. Your fingers aren't stiff enough. The fingers should be like plexiglass. Just, Anna, that's good. Kathleen, that's pretty, there, that's good. Yeah, and it's a very weird feeling actually, right? Delaine's cat is just doing this wonderfully. Yes, Monica. Yes. Yeah, Amy, you know, there's these, the Feldenkrais lesson where you lie on your stomach and lift your head and your legs up and turn your body into a kind of an arch shape like that, and then you rock the entire body. This is kind of like a piano version of that. But we're not in extension, we're just in standing. Yeah, Elena, yeah. Okay. So this works when the hand is like rock. So this is, some people don't like what I do because I'm telling you to stiffen your hand. Stiffness is bad. Yeah, but this particular stiffening exercise, we're going to do it on key, and we're actually going to do it quite quickly. Don't go that quickly. Now let's do it on key. And notice when the more solid you keep your hand, the more you hear that kind of knocking sound. Knock. And you don't move your fingers at all. It's not this. It's not moving the fingers. It's just, the whole thing is solid. Don't worry, there's a reason for this. So, yeah. And then change the finger. Solid. Change the finger. Change the finger. Solid, 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 solid. Yeah, keep going. And when you feel ready, you go a little faster and you do not lose the solidity of your hand. Kathleen, you need to be straighter fingered. Yeah, that's it. And now, stop for a moment, let your hands hang by your sides. Feel the difference between the hand that was walking like this, sauntering, solidly, solid sauntering, and the other hand that wasn't doing it. What's the sense of the length of the arm? And does the hand that was really solidifying itself, is it more let go now than the one that did not solidify itself? You see, when you solidify your hand and activate all those muscles to such an extreme extent, afterwards they let go. Because we weren't activating them in a strained, dysfunctional way. We were just enhancing the structurality that's already there. Okay? So now, again, would you do this? Pick your favorite finger. Do you like doing this with your fifth finger in your thumb, or your fourth finger in your thumb, or your third finger, or your second? Maybe not the second. But pick one of those fingers. I'm going to do the fourth. And now a black note and a white note. So the finger on a black and the thumb on a white. Yeah? Yeah? And so if you teach your students sauntering sandpiper, this is actually how it's played. Yeah? So So I changed the black note, but you see, I didn't get my hand any less stiff. Maybe my hand got 2% less stiff, but I give the mental command, keep it stiff, and then it won't collapse. So try playing that rhythm, ba 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 dee dee ba ba dee dee ba dee ba dee ba dee 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 ba dee 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 ba dee 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 ba dee ba dee ba dee. And you should feel the hand rocking. Rock, 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 rock. Yeah. I don't want to see the wrist moving more than the hand. I want to see the wrist moving as a result of the hand rocking. You see, Elena, it's different from what you were doing. It's just the hand rocking. There. And maybe turn the elbow sideways more. In. Yeah, so that the wrist has less of a tendency to release forward. We were all taught to release the wrist forward. And I forget, was it with you guys or with the study group last week? We discovered that this, like releasing the wrist the other way, opens the clavicle and makes you take an in-breath. And releasing the wrist forward closes down the clavicle and makes you take an out-breath. So, so I don't want to out-breath here. I want to... You see, I'm actually just rotating my arms to play the nose. See that rotation? So supinate too far, pronate too far, supinate too far, pronate too far. Keep the hand solid. There, Elena. There's something screwy of Alejandra's, but I'm not sure what. Yeah, do it down there so I can see better. Oh, okay, it's good. Alejandra, your thumb is is tense, but it's held up tense. Look, Alejandro, don't tense your thumb like this, tense your thumb like that. Yeah. Make the thumb straight. Look, poke the thumb this way. Poke the thumb this way. Yeah, and now do the exercise. Now play the piece. That's it. Could you keep your thumb in your hand in that position and stand it up more? Yeah. Yeah, so down, and then bum, and then da, 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 da. Yeah. Yeah. Totally different experience. For your hand, for the sound of the piano, and for your entire arm and shoulder. Yeah. We have to be rigorous about the angles here. Yeah. That's great. Ramon, you're wiggling your fingers. I'm actually doing, look. Keep the hand totally solid. Solid. This is the arch opposite of that famous lesson in overwind that we did. It's like you can't get any more extreme opposite. Yeah, Brian, you're wiggling your wrists too much. Brian, I want a higher arch, a more expressed arch. Yeah, I don't care what finger you have, but you see, it's really arch. And look, I tilt the arch. Look, I tilt the arch, and my arm rotates to tilt the arch. My arm pronates to tilt the arch onto the thumb. And now I'm going to tilt the arch onto the, but the arch doesn't change its shape. I supinate to tilt the arch onto the finger. And I tilt the arch onto the thumb, and I pronate and supinate, and I tilt, but the arch stays solid. You see, that's great. Now supinate more. Go further. And don't collapse. Supinate and don't collapse. And now pronate and don't collapse. Yeah, it's a totally different feeling, Brian. You see? And why, and now, Brian, everybody, we get to the reason why I said stiffen so much. When you stiffen that much, and the only way you can get the note down is by supinating, because you're so stiff. Now I have to pronate, because I'm so stiff, that's the only way I can play the key is by supinating or pronating. Then the hand is in its structural potency. And then when you go to play, the hand remembers that structural potency, and now the fingers are moving, but they're going like son of a guns because they remembered, my God, we can do this and not fall down at all. We cannot fall down at all. Try it. So the stiffer you keep the hand and the more you just rotate, pronate onto the thumb, supinate onto the finger. Go a little too far without weakening that stiff structure of the hand. All those muscles which are now holding the hand tight, they will move the fingers afterwards. Yeah, Kathleen, you're moving your fingers. Like, we create a constraint here. We do not move our fingers. I don't. If you can see, it's my fingers like we're in cement. Like if I could put each finger into a plaster cast, and like I cannot move my finger. I cannot move my finger. So I can't move my fingers. I can't. So the only way I'm going to play that note is by rotating my arm. And now I can't move my thumb. It's stuck. So now I just pronate my arm. Yeah, that's it. You see, it's and don't even wave your fingers up in the air like that. You literally pretend that they are stuck. Like you dipped your hand into a huge pot of glue, and the glue encased every part, and then you took it out and the glue hardened. And like, the only way you can play is by rotating your arm, pronating and supinating. That's it. That's the purpose of this exercise. And for those of you who are going to be, I think kids are going to get this quicker than you guys. Oh, Alejandra, that's wonderful. Monica, that's very good. That's it. Because kids, I don't know, we have to figure out an image so that the kids, like maybe it's Transformers. Oh, look, my hand is a Transformers hand, and it's just a solid thing. It's like made of plastic or something. It's a robot. My hand is a robot. And then you get them playing ba 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 ba, but quickly, but with this rotation and totally stiff fingers. It would seem like perverse, but this stiffening of the fingers, all those muscles that you use to stiffen the fingers, they can also make those fingers run.
Lobster claws, or would that be too tense?
Yeah, lobster claws, yeah. This brings me, I used to draw lobster claws in my scores to remind myself, oh, here I really need that hand structure. And then at a certain point, that was 35 years ago, and then at a certain point I thought, oh, that's too stiff. But I erased them all. I said, no, that's perverse. I can't do that. So now you have to understand that this is a specific exercise with a specific organization for a specific goal. So I would not put the lobster claw into the score anymore, only for the sauntering sandpiper. Nowhere else. It's actually a variation on teetering toucan. Teetering toucan is a variation on this one. Now, teetering toucan is with the fingers glued together, and this one is with the fingers not glued together. Therefore, muscular effort must be brought into play more to keep that hand in its stiff hand structure.
What's this one called?
This is Sauntering Sandpipers, page 74. Yeah. Any questions about this? So I love doing these with you because I see how much preparation is needed. Like for these lessons, I created these lessons to help the hand evolve, like to turbocharge the evolution of the pianist's hand. It's like a dozen a day on steroids. It's like, I can't really put that in my advertising, but but I'm seeing just how much savvy and how much we need to invest a certain mental effort in order to really gain the full benefit from each one of these chapters. It's very interesting. But you're doing very well. It's wonderful for me to see so clearly on the screen where people are going off and how it's relatively easy to fix it. But you have to see that you're going off. No, it's not that, it's this. And then you have to see how to fix it. But that's, once you perceive it, it's relatively easy to get back on track. So by correcting each of you, I've sort of managed to, we've gotten clearer about just what is this exercise about? What is the goal and why does it have this seemingly perverse hand organization? So let's move on because we have 2 more chapters before the end. And I would actually like to do skip to chapter 21, page 78 now, because this preparation for arpeggios is to stand on the second and it's a specific kind of standing which is related to the thumb. Because when I go, I'm going to play now just go to play any sort of thing with your fingers and then reach over here to play a wide interval with your thumb. And notice what happens to your second knuckle. Because what everybody does is they drop the knuckle to get the thumb to its note. So did you drop your knuckle or did you do something else? If you studied with me for a long time, you probably did something else. And if you're, and many others of you possibly did not drop the knuckle. But many people will actually drop the knuckle because that's the easiest way to get to the thumb. So try that actually. Play some damn notes and then get onto your second finger, drop the second finger knuckle, play a large interval to the thumb and feel how that feels in the forearm, behind the elbow, in the upper arm, the shoulder, and the body. And if you're really sensing what you're feeling, you may notice that there's a certain kind of cramping going on. So try, drop the knuckle, reach out with the thumb, or maybe that's too, maybe you can even do it with a fourth. Because once people get into the habit of this dropping the knuckle, they do it even for not that large intervals. Now, get onto the second knuckle again, stand up, angle the knuckle to the inside without dropping it. put it higher, put it higher, put it higher, and move the arm using this, look, as a pivot. Pivot on your second finger. Pivot on your second. Pivot on your second finger, and then keeping the second knuckle sky high, drop the thumb into its note. And notice how different that feels. Elena is wonderful, but I don't know, is your wrist the same as mine? Or is it a little higher? I can't tell. I think that's even better. That's it, Alejandra.
Is this another way of saying grow the monster?
Yeah, it's growing the monster applied to a specific situation where virtually everybody will abandon the monster. So grow it, grow it, grow it, grow it, grow it, even if you have to reach a seventh from the second to the thumb. Come on, grow that monster, grow that monster, grow that monster. And now the thumb plays from receiving full support from the hand. Instead of the thumb played totally divorced from the hand with no support emanating from the hand at all. The second knuckle is collapsed. The thumb has to do it all on its own. And there's all sorts of tension all the way up the arm into the shoulder and body. And now notice what happens in the shoulder and body when you do the monster while bringing the thumb to the inside. Keep the second finger standing well, and notice how you feel all the way up your arm. And just notice the difference between those two. So then we created some music for that just by all of that to be done with the second finger, as Brian said, continually feeling that monster movement, that inner monster growing feeling, which will tend to go away when you want to play your thumb, because the brain goes, oh, I can't do the monster and play the thumb, but you must do the monster and play the thumb. That's the whole way of playing the thumb in a well-organized fashion. Make sense?
Can the wrist be high?
Yeah, for this one, the wrist can be high, but not too high. Because if the wrist is too high, your second knuckle is less pumped. Yeah, see, I pumped my second knuckle and my wrist is high, but if my wrist is more high, then my second knuckle is less pumped. Now my second knuckle is more pumped. Now my second knuckle is less pumped. And you notice when the wrists got high, my shoulder also got high, which is not so great either. And when the second knuckle takes it upon herself to pump itself, then the wrist can find the neutral point. So yes, the wrist will be high, but make sure that the sense, the inner experience of the wrist is still one of, oh, I'm a neutral kind of wrist. I am negotiating. I am the negotiator between the hand and the arm. Yeah. So now let's put the thumb and the second together by, you can do this away from the piano at first. So actually you just do a light tap, thumb two, and when you've done it, you bring the straight thumb to a straight second finger under pad. And the thumb says, hello, finger. And it's that tap. Yeah? And it's quick. It's actually as quick as possible. Da-dum! And now, Joyce, your arm, look what happens to my arm. I do da-da. Look where my arm went. You see, look, I'll do it in slow motion. Look, my hand is going to stand up and my thumb's going to come in here to the second finger. Did you notice my arm followed? It's because if I'm here and I take a step and then I bring my other foot in to be with my first foot, the one that took a step, look where my body goes. Yeah? So when the thumb goes to touch the finger pad, the arm will go with the thumb. That's better. Not your elbow, Brian. Brian. Not your elbow. It's this. I'll do it in slow motion. Bop, bop. It's not the elbow. It's just the forearm lateral. Yeah, Phil Cohen calls this the oblique whole arm. Da-da. It's very compact, actually, but look, watch my arm. Ba-doo. There, that's it, Brian. That was the most efficient one you did. Ramon, your wrist is a little high. A little high. Yeah, no, now move your arm more, but don't make the wrist go up. It's too much. There. Did you feel something engaged, like something? Move the arm a little more, Ramon. I told you not to move your wrist too high, and then you constrain something. Yeah, there, that's it. There, you feel something in, like, everything comes together. Yeah, be sure that the under pad of the thumb comes to the under pad of the finger. It's this. Yeah? Now, straight thumb, straight second, straight third, thumb to the underside of the third finger. Listen to the sound. Good. Monica, I can't see. Your camera's a little high. There. Make them, no, but do 1, 2, 3. Don't just do 1, 3. Do 1, 2, 3. There, that. And now try it a little quicker, Monica. Dig-a-dum. Dig-a-dum. There, that. Now don't let the, there, that's it. So when you do dig-a-dum, you bring the thumb in, you snap it to the finger, and you do not let the wrist go, because that makes everything loose. But you actually want to keep everything elastically loaded. Yeah. And then finally, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's good, Kathleen. Wow. That's good, Anna. Elsa, the thumb is a little, the thumb needs to have a, that's it. Don't fall down on the thumb, but tap it. There, that was a good one. Did you feel that? The feeling is very, it's like drumsticks. Your hand turned into a bunch of little drumsticks suddenly. Why is it so important that the sound is very important with this one. When we go to the piano, try it at the piano. Keep your microphones muted. But you know, the sound is everything. You're going for a certain sound. Ba-da, dig-a-da, diddle-da-da. So, and now, you hear ba-da-da. And now, dig-a-da-da. No, that was a bad one. That was a bad one. That was a good one. So, hello, thumb, second finger. Thumb says hello, third finger. Thumb says hello, fourth finger. That sound is what you're going for. It's diga. It's a very specific sound. It's not just light. And of course we do it on the black keys in the piece because it's a little bit. So I write in step 5, bring the hand across the thumb with translation and rotation, not horizontal swiveling. This is for later on when we actually have to play the whole piece. So when we play the snapping scale pieces, I'm going to show you the left hand. You can follow along. This is in A flat major, or D flat major actually. Yeah, and now when I get to here, you'll notice that, look, how did I get to the next note? I do not swivel, I just rotate and translate. Translate is going sideways without swiveling. Just the forearm sideways. And now I'm here. Oh, I'm sorry, I just did a later variation. So in the actual piece, you go through all the variations where first you just thumb says hello to the second, hello to the third, hello to the fourth. Try this and sense the feeling all through the hand and arm and up into the body. How does this little da-da, digga-da-da, how does that translate into the sense of connection of hand through the shoulder to the body? And then when we're going backwards, sorry. And then afterwards, we will actually do two thumb notes. No, sorry. Yeah. And then the that's the last variation is, yeah. Sorry. And finally, we get resolution on the last note of the piece. So the last two bars it's you have to be very, very agile, and you have to have really installs this sense of boom, a quick opposition of the thumb, actually clamping. You clamp very firmly and very lightly at the same time. Listen to the sound. Yeah? This, can you click your fingers? And everybody knows how to snap their fingers? It's a very similar feeling to the snapping the fingers. No, snap the fingers. It's snap your thumb. Like, when you snap your thumb, I don't know what they do in Russia, but in Canada, the thumb starts on the third finger, and then the thumb goes to the side, and it's actually the finger that makes the noise. The finger going onto the heel of the hand makes the noise. That clicking your fingers, that snapping, that's the third finger hitting the heel. That's the third finger hitting the heel. So here we do it a little bit different. It's a similar feeling, but now the thumb actually hits the underside of the second finger. The thumb hits the third finger pad. The thumb hits the fourth finger pad. But the feeling is the same as if you're snapping your fingers. Okay? So it's called a snapping scale, but it's the noise is not made the same way. It's just the feeling is of a snap, snap. And that snapping feeling translates snap, snap. Yeah?
Could you demonstrate the going up?
So again, I draw my thumb, I clamp my thumb to the fourth finger, clamp the thumb to the fourth finger, clamp the thumb to the third finger. 1, 4, 3, 2, clamp the thumb to the second finger. 1, 3, clamp the thumb to the third finger. 1, 3, 2, clamp the thumb to the second finger. So this is a much more integrative exercise. This is taking us towards actual playing, but in an ingenious way where you're still not playing, because obviously nobody clamps their thumb to their fingers like that when they play. But again, the muscles that were engaged by solidifying the hand in sauntering sandpiper are now, those same muscles are very highly engaged, but they're moving, which is way, way closer to walking on key.
On the way up, if you start with the thumb on the white key and then play the dark keys to the second finger, it feels like the thumb is not in a snapping place. It's under your hand, and you have to bring it under your hand to get to the first place. Is not the same as boom.
Yeah, it's because your thumb is bent. Look at my thumb. Look at my thumb. Look at my thumb. Look at my thumb. It's straight. So look, my thumb is straight. If my thumb is straight, then to bring my thumb across to the finger is simply to bring it. You see? So whether I go,
top keys are not in the picture. Your top keys are not in the picture.
You see, whether I go down, whether I go to the outside or whether I go to the inside, it's completely the same because my thumb stands erect and not half bent. So that you can't do it because your thumb's not starting from the right position. Your thumb has to be straight. That's what makes this work. Excellent question. You see, if my thumb is in a viable position when I start, then going to the inside or going to the outside is literally the same, which is very interesting. We're way over time. I just looked at the time. I had no idea we went so long. Are there any questions before we close and move on to our lessons?
I have a question about how about fifth finger with this exercise.
Oh, you can do it with the fifth too. I didn't put it in the book because it's a little tricky. But of course, you can go.
It's the same.
You see? It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same. It's but I didn't want. It's a little challenging, right? But actually, you should do it. You should be able to do it. Yeah. Anybody else? Impressions, comments, experiences, questions? I need a timekeeper. Anyway, yes, Kathleen.
I thought it was a fabulous lesson and so well taught. Bravo.
Great, thank you, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot in there, man. This is just like one chapter, one section, 4 chapters, but boy, just from standing to actually going from one standing finger to another standing finger, it's a huge. Like it's that moment. I mean, everybody's completely crazy about that when they have kids. You know, everybody. Oh, when did she stand? When did she start walking? When did she start walking? When did he start walking? It's like the standard question with babies. There's always, oh, they're walking. Yeah, great. It's a real trial by fire. But there's a lot in there. So I like these exercises which break down walking into its constituent parts and then kind of assembles it in an organically logical sequence. So try all these out. You'll have this recording already tomorrow, and try them out, and please, do formulate your questions, figure out whether the sequencing was good for you, and whether other things need to be addressed. And we'll look forward to your questions. Anybody else? We're all good? Great. So now let's move. Let's 2-minute break. Yeah, we're really behind schedule. Who's first up? Elena's first up with Schumann Kinderszenen.
Yes.
Good. So let's just pause the recording.